investigating for you. This is News 4 Tucson, live at 10.
We begin with breaking news. Power knocked out to 2,200 homes on the south side tonight after a car crashed into a pole. Right now, Valencia is shut down from Calle Santa Cruz to Midvale Park, at least until tomorrow morning, we're told. Tucson police say a man slammed into the pole, causing it to tumble into the road. We're also told no one was injured. Police do not believe drugs or alcohol were a factor in the crash.
And good evening, I'm Angelique Lazardi.
And I'm Sean Mooney. Tucson Streetcar recently celebrated its first year of service and its 1 millionth passenger. But as News 4 Tucson investigators uncovered earlier this year, lots of people took a free ride at taxpayer expense.
Yeah, well, the city told us they were working to correct the problem, so the News 4 Tucson investigators wanted to find out if the numbers were actually getting better. Here's Steve Ryan.
We're tracking them on a monthly basis and doing our best to not only be sure that our equipment's working properly, but also educate the general public on how to pay for their fare.
The city of Tucson's response when the News 4 Tucson investigators first reported that tens of thousands of people seemed to be taking a free ride on the streetcar. We looked closely at two separate numbers. The first from automatic passenger counters on the Sunlink cars. The second from the fare validator. According to figures we obtained through a public records request, in some months in the streetcar's first half year of service, only about half of the people actually used fare cards.
I noticed you didn't swipe your card. Why?
No, actually, I didn't have my card with me today.
Well, how do you pay for it?
I have a pass that I use.
Riders forgetting their fare cards isn't the only reason for not swiping. There are equipment failures too.
So why didn't you two ladies swipe?
Because the machine won't work.
3 credit cards we tried. 3 different ones. It wouldn't take any of them.
The News 4 Tucson investigators took a look at the most recent numbers provided by the city. In February, about 3/4 of the more than 83,000 riders used their fare cards. That number crept up in March. About 80% of passengers used cards. In April, 98% of the more than 71,000 passengers used cards. That's a big turnaround from some previous months.
98%. Why so good there?
You know, it's hard to say. We love it when the numbers are that close together. And so, you know, we have been doing fare enforcement along the alignment since we opened. We are continuing to educate our passengers.
But in May, nearly 64,000 people rode the streetcar and only about 48,000 used their fare card. It was worse in June. With more than 50,000 passengers, only 31,000 of them used a card. The city does have fare enforcement officers, though.
Our education phase is over, and so in year 2, when we see repeat offenders, the idea is to is we will be writing tickets, and so we do make sure that folks have a valid fare, and we want to let them know that in year 2, if you are riding without a valid fare and you are a repeat offender, you could be ticketed.
Officials say there may be legitimate reasons for the differences in numbers. For example, young children don't pay. The city has also launched a mobile app to streamline ticket buying. It also eliminates any excuse for people to take a free ride. Investigating for you, I'm Steve Ryan, News 4 Tucson.
If you have something you'd like to share with News 4 Tucson investigators, just check out our email at investigators@kvoa.com or call the tip line at 955-4444.
Douglas police need help finding a missing man. 82-year-old Guadalupe Gamboa was last seen yesterday afternoon. He has Alzheimer's and dementia and is new to the area. Gamboa is described as 5'4" and about 150 pounds, although he may appear shorter due to a hunchback. If you see him, you're urged to call the Douglas Police Department. The number is on the screen there, 417-7550. And a group from Saddlebrook is back home after a very disappointing vacation.
Yes, they flew to Europe to get on a cruise ship that never finished the trip. News 4 Tucson's Sam Swiddle is with us with all the details, new at 10.
Well, 12 people got together and planned this 2 years ago. They took one of the first voyages on a new ship, but some are saying they wish they would have never left the U.S. Jerry Wilkerson was one of hundreds of passengers on Viking's new ship, the Star.
Lights flashed and the fire doors all closed. And that's kind of disconcerting when you're on a ship and you're out in the middle of the Baltic Sea.
The ship lost an engine and spent days at a port in Estonia.
The biggest problem was we couldn't find out what was going on, and this was a dream.
He still had all the amenities, but would not call the time much of a vacation.
A terrible time. Terrible time. And the unknowing of what's going to come tomorrow was very difficult to work with.
The boat slowly made it back to the original port ahead of schedule. The company offered half his money back. But even if he got a full refund, the trip still cost thousands of dollars in airfare, hotels, and other expenses to get to and from Europe. He was also offered half off his next cruise, which he's unlikely to use.
It's not going to happen, especially in Europe. It's just not.
All the mechanical problems are fixed, and the ship is once again full of tourists that just left on August 10th. Sean?
Yes, but they escaped the heat. I'm sure many of you wish you could have escaped this gruesome heat we've experienced. 5 days in triple digits.
That's right, and for some it really got to them despite first responders warning to stay indoors and hydrated. Northwest Fire says they responded to 3 heat-related calls today, and Tucson Fire, well, they helped about 5 people who fell victim to the heat.
But we could get some relief tomorrow. Meteorologist John Patrick has the details. That's right. John?
Yeah, Sean, happy to say the worst of that heat has passed us. Just dangerous stuff this weekend. We broke records on both Friday, Saturday, almost got there this afternoon. We were able to make it up to 106 on your Sunday, but that did come up just shy of that record-breaking heat, which would have been 108 this afternoon. No complaints, I don't think, that we didn't quite get there, but hey, it's still pretty toasty this evening. Mid-90s now across the metro, and are watching a few showers and thunderstorms start to redevelop over portions of Cochise County, not adding up to all too much as those work off to the southwest. We do have a large complex of storms just south of the border, but that is working further down into Mexico away from Arizona. And for many of us, back to the daily grind tomorrow, 7 a.m. already in the 80s. We'll be approaching that 100-degree mark as soon as your lunch hour, but those daytime highs not quite as high tomorrow. I think we're topping out around 103, 104 degrees, and we'll continue to see those temperatures drop from there. Details on that in your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
Thank you for that, John. Well, Tucson firefighters had to brave the blistering temperatures plus the heat from a house fire on the south side. It happened near Ajo and 12th, according to TFD. The fire started on the back porch of the home and quickly caught several appliances on fire. The Red Cross will be helping out the family of 3 tonight while they're displaced. The cause of the fire is still under investigation.
We have protective equipment that we wear that protects us from the fire itself, but it's basically like walking around in a giant sleeping bag for 15-20 minutes in extreme temperatures.
Now you can imagine, in combination with today's heat, those firefighters were baking in their protective gear. Crews immediately retreated to what they call rehab after putting out that house fire. They rehydrated and cooled off, so they're ready for whatever is thrown at them next.
It used to be that people would just sit on the tailboard of the fire engine after the fire was done and relax a little bit. But as we've learned about how heat affects the heart, and as we've learned about how the different gases from fires also affect the cardiovascular system, we've taken it much more seriously to get people away from the fire.
Luckily, no firefighters were injured while battling that blaze.
Well, new at 10 years ago this month, Pima County Sheriff's Deputy Timothy Graham was killed after struggling with a suspect and being struck by a vehicle on Tucson's south side. A decade later, memories of a cherished son remain very much alive.
We just had a super close relationship. He and I did everything together.
Judy Graham raised her son Timothy on her own. She says he was always interested in police work and loved his job as a sheriff's deputy. She also understood it was a dangerous job. The memory of learning he had been killed still vivid.
When I went home that night, there were 3 men there from the department, and I knew immediately. I said, my son is dead.
It was August 10th, 2005. Deputy Graham had answered a call of a disturbed man at Ajo and Kinney Roads. He ended up scuffling with the suspect, and when a good Samaritan stopped to help, all 3 fell into the roadway and were struck and killed by an oncoming pickup truck.
I miss him terribly.
Judy says her faith is what has allowed her to move forward, but she will never let the memory of her loving son ever fade.
He was a #1 human being. He loved people. He loved Tucson.
Judy Graham had moved to Tucson from Illinois to live with her son and his wife just 3 months before he was killed. She remained here, she says, because like her son, she loves Tucson.
Well, up next at 10, how a local church hopes to heal the homeless problem in Tucson, and you can help.
Plus, a busy tone on the child abuse hotline, why an investigation won't need to happen for every report. Keep it here. News 4 at 10. We'll be right back.
Investigating for you. This is News 4 Tucson.